And the next frontier for humanity is the ocean. But there's more. The ocean is not just the next frontier. It's actually physically different. It's a fluid medium which enables a different type of society. Cruise ships are as large as skyscrapers, yet they move around all the time because of the fluid nature of the ocean, which means that these floating cities will be physically rearrangeable in a way that's impossible on land. Not only can they copy each other's laws and innovations and remix them, but they can combine territory or aquatory. They can split. They can grow by taking pieces from other floating cities. It's truly a dynamic environment on the ocean, and it will lead naturally to these more experimental societies. And this is not a utopian idea. Notice that I haven't said anything, except a couple examples, about exactly what type of system we should use. It's not that I know what political system everyone should use. I mean, I have some ideas. I'm sure we all do. But I don't know if they'll work. And even if they worked as best as they could, I don't think they'd be right for everyone. The idea here is to empower every group of people with a vision for a better society to go build it. Instead of arguing in theory about what works best, let's try to let 1,000 nations bloom in practice. And then instead of politics being about arguing and debate about one size fits all, we can go shopping. We can go shopping for countries like you shop for a house in a neighborhood today. I've actually found this perspective on politics just incredibly lowering for my stress. Things are no longer a titanic moral struggle between good and evil. We can all just get along. If we disagree about political means, about what the best laws are, we're just disagreeing about how we think the world works. And when adults have different theories, they don't need to yell or argue. They can go do experiments and let reality to startups trying more new things. We can all be happy. So that was the big vision, but this is more than a vision. We're putting it into practice. Every day at the Seasteading Institute, we're trying to make this future a reality. Let me give you a quick run through what we're working on. One of the big challenges of seasteading is just that it's so big, right? Like everything has something to do with building a new country. Every field of science. But we can't work on everything. They can't work on everything. We definitely can't. And so with these limited resources and a huge challenge, we have to focus ruthlessly on the few core challenges. Fortunately, most of the problems of living on the ocean are solved. Cruise ships basically are floating cities. They provide the basics of life: water, food, power, internet, barely, at a pretty reasonable cost. So the question is, what's missing? What's missing is political autonomy, engineering that can expand, business models besides just tourism, and a community of pioneers. This autonomy is absolutely crucial because the goal here is to be able to do political experiments, and that requires local autonomy. And it's hard because law is complex, international law is even more complex, and trying to do new things in international law, it's ridiculously complex. These are fields of law that are almost as vast and mysterious as the ocean, and it's hard to wrap your heads around. So we're trying to understand them so that we can figure out how much autonomy we can get now and craft strategies to increase this going forward. We've got a series of papers on this coming out this year. Engineering. We're going to start with modified cruise ships, but the long-term goal is to be settlers, not nomads. And so what we need are new engineering designs for platforms that are inexpensive, safe, and can combine modularly in a way that no oil platform today can, to grow from a building to a village to a city. We've designed a 200-guest hotel designed for the waves off Southern California that was $300 a square foot. We have a bunch of other engineering papers and more research ongoing. Business models are absolutely key to our success. I mean, these seasteads are going to be expensive. We're going to need capital, and people who live there are going to need jobs. That's why we held a business plan contest called Sink or Swim. We have the Magellan Network of Entrepreneurs, and we're releasing a series of overview papers about doing business on seasteads. Our top business so far is medical tourism, where people go to other countries either for lower costs or less waiting time on medical care. I've actually personally experienced this. I spent 7 weeks last year in Hyderabad, India, to save $80,000 on a procedure that my insurance wouldn't cover. So I know it works. And don't get all Canadian on me, I checked, and it's not covered here either. Seasteads can bring these same benefits to just 12 miles offshore. Finally, we're working on building a community. The residents who will pioneer new ways of life on seasteads, the entrepreneurs who will create jobs, the donors and investors whose resources power our work, and perhaps most importantly, supporters around the world who understand that even if they never move to a seastead, they'll get better service if seasteading exists, because a startup sector for government means more competition, more new ideas, means things will eventually improve in the current large providers, existing countries. We spread the word to this community through press coverage, social media, talks like this one, and through more unusual events like Ephemerile, our annual gathering as a floating festival on the waters in California. I actually just got back from the third annual Ephemerile, which was last weekend. I'm still kind of recovering. It's our sort of Burning Man on the water. Here's our timeline. I founded the Seasteading Institute in 2008 with Peter Thiel, who was the founder and CEO of PayPal. You may also know him as the first investor in Facebook, who he was featured in the movie The Social Network for. We've been doing a few years of research and movement building. We expect to see the first seasteading businesses happen in the next year on small boats. In a few years, they'll move to larger vessels, and in 5 to 7 years, we expect to see the first of these newly designed engineering platforms, hosting a range of businesses. In about 10 years, we'll see the first villages for thousands of people and an even broader range of businesses. These villages are a very important milestone for me personally, because that's when my wife said that we can move our family to a seastead. Another 10 years from then, these villages, at least one of them, will have grown into a true floating city for hundreds of thousands of people. After that comes world domination. So our time together has been brief, but it's a big idea, and I'm in this for the long haul. If you're interested, I encourage you to go check out our website, sign up for one of our update channels. It's going to be a years, decades-long adventure. Thank you.
Patri, that's fascinating, as are your running shoes. I've read about those things. What are they called?
They're the Vibram 5 Fingers. I've got
Can we get
5
a shot
pairs.
of that? Can we get a shot of that? They look like second skin.
They're like foot gloves. They're awesome.
Yeah. And
by the way, I can help you live longer. Let's talk.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, why don't we let them in on it as well?
Sure. Well, there's something called intermittent fasting. It's where instead of restricting calories, you say don't eat very much every other day. Mm-hmm. And even if you eat so much in those in between, the up days, as to have the same number of calories, it actually has the same protective effects as calorie restriction. I gave a talk on this last year. So you only have to suffer every other day, and you can eat as much as you want in between.
Well, you know what? I actually do that spontaneously in the sense that... No, I mean, there are days when you just forget to eat, and I eat mostly for social reasons, really. From a condo, that system of government is planted by the owner, or do you then... It
can be either. So that's up to each individual community. We imagine that some of them will form like a group of people who come together around one political system and come up with it. Others will be created by entrepreneurs, sort of like Singapore, where they say, okay, here's the system, we think it's great, if you like it, come here.
Well, then it's governments like Vegas hotels, in a way. I mean,
I like Vegas hotels.
Your illustrations reminded me of Vegas hotels. So I'll ask you one last question, which is, you gave me the impression that you're about to begin one of these yourself. So are you the autocrat, the potentate, the
CEO.
owner, CEO? And will this have a kind of collective farm quality, a Moshav organization?
Hospital. We're looking at this medical tourism business very seriously. So basically a hospital ship, where instead of flying to India or Thailand for a procedure that your insurance doesn't cover, get on a boat in San Diego or Florida, sail out 12 miles and get it.
No, that's cool. That's like going to an offshore casino, but that doesn't mean you're moving on board.
Right, so that's the short term, and we want to build up those businesses over the next 5 to 10 years so that we can actually put a community out there that'll be a real country.
Last question, and this time I mean it. There's this boat called the World, where you can buy a condo aboard and live aboard, and it's in perpetual sale around the globe, isn't it?
That's right.
How are the social dynamics aboard that boat? Have you studied those?
I visited it briefly when it was in San Francisco. It's interesting. Most of the people only spend 3 months a year there on average. And they're not trying to do anything very innovative in terms of governing systems. In fact, they're very explicit, like, this is not a different country, you can't use this as your official residential address, and so forth. So that's one issue. And another is just because they travel around the world all the time, the expenses are incredible. So you're paying 3 or 4 times as much per year for all those fuel costs and everything as you'd be paying for the mortgage payments on your condo. So we need to find ways of doing the same thing much more cheaply.
Well, I have one piece of advice for you. Make legal in your country what's illegal everywhere else. You'll be amazed what'll happen.
Sounds like a plan.